Reddit Martian back with another tip-top video for you. r/AskReddit. Dispatchers of Reddit. What calls have you taken on the non-emergency line that definitely was an emergency? Had a guy tell me he is on his way to her and asked if we have a wheelchair waiting for him because he thinks he will pass out as soon as he shows up. Turns out he cut his hand clean off and was driving one-handed, bleeding all over the place to her. Dude even picked up his hand and put it in his jacket pocket. Adrenaline is one hell of a drug. One of my instructors in A told us a story about how they were responding to a call where the patient was complaining about chest pain. For obvious reasons, he and the other EMTs were preparing for some sort of cardiac issue. They get to the scene just to find out that the patient's chest pain was due to the gunshot wound in his chest. This technically doesn't fit your criteria, since chest pain is also an emergency, but I figured it fit well enough. Used to work for the 111 service, which is supposed to be non-emergency. The most memorable ones was when a guy's wife just fell asleep. Yeah, she was dead. Another one was a mum called us after her 18-month-old wouldn't wake up after she dropped it down a ducking flight of ducking stairs. Edit. I forgot to add she was contacting us about 7 hours after it occurred. One was a guy whose mum called us as she had some concerns for her son's mental health. Gives me his number so I give him a call. All I hear is, edit, it was her daughter-in-law's number if I recall correctly. He's got a knife please my baby, and the call cuts out. Everything turned relatively fine according to the call notes. A call from a phone box from a guy saying he was taking some drugs, he wouldn't say which, with his friend, who then had an overdose and started foaming at the mouth and went to funny color, so the guy ran away. I asked when this occurred, to which the guy responded about 15 minutes. I never found out what the specific outcome was, but let's be honest. Plenty of strokes, heart attacks, kids drinking bleach, basically anything and everything you could imagine. You'd be calmly asking questions while frantically gesturing the universal phrase for "why the duck are you calling US?" Edit. Got a call on a Sunday afternoon that went like this. My wife has taken a bit of a funny turn. Maybe 7-10 times I heard this phrase. It ends up being some kind of common stroke symptom. Been complaining that her arm went numb, and she started slurring her speech. She's been feeling dizzy and complaining of a really bad headache. We didn't call anyone because it was the weekend, but it's got a lot worse. Okay, when did the symptoms begin? Friday afternoon. Not a dispatcher, but got a call about a noise disturbance from a farm at the edge of city limits. Turns out a party had gotten hijacked by a tweaker who thought it was a good idea to break into a house full of teenagers. Turned into a 3-hour hostage situation. Guy crashed when the drugs left his system. Nobody got hurt. So, I thought this set worker, and had a very different visual of the situation. One time I called 311 because a guy had a handsaw and was cutting down a tree along the sidewalk of Clark Street in Chicago. The 311 operator said she was connecting me to 911. And I tried to say it wasn't a big deal. Just send someone when you can, etc. She interrupted. You're telling me that a man with saw is on Clark Street and showing signs of being nuts? Yup. 911 please. Not a dispatcher, but I called about a lost dog near the beach one summer. The dispatcher asked if it had a collar, what breed it was, etc. And we eventually realized it was a coyote. 4 bonus points. When animal control and the cops showed up, they told me it had rabies. Thankfully it was early enough, nobody was at the beach yet. Not a dispatcher but a paramedic. We got a call for a fall and the patient only needed help up. Per dispatch notes, reporting party said patient was breathing, conscious, and was at her normal mental status. We didn't run lights and sirens due to no apparent life threat and the relatively short distance. Under 2 miles with light traffic. Get inside. Patient is having a full-blown stroke. She is unresponsive and was struggling to breathe. The wall right next to her head had a hole that busted through the drywall. patient ended up having a hemorrhagic stroke and it was believed to have happened when she hit the wall. We took her home on hospice a few days later. Still annoys me to this day about the whole situation, but you live and you learn. However, there is not much we or the hospital could have done. Family honored her wishes and asked for comfort measures. I used to work for 111, which is the non-emergency medical line here in the UK. I once had a call from a carer for an elderly lady who was wheelchair bound and pretty much immobile. Upon taking the call, one of the first questions I ask is, can I possibly speak to the patient, which is normally a quick yes or number. The carer hummed for a good couple of minutes before deciding no, I couldn't speak to the patient. Her reasoning? The patient couldn't breathe and was turning blue. Almost 10 years in 911 here. I think it's about a 50-50 split for emergencies take on 911 lines versus non-emergency admin lines. Shock does really weird things to people. And some people panic and call in emergencies that aren't emergencies to any rational person. But the caller isn't thinking rationally. I've taken calls for seppuku by firearm, rollover accidents, and house fires on non-emergent lines only to turn around and answer a 911 line for something like my neighbor's dogs are barking and won't shut up. Not a dispatcher, but I was the caller. I was sitting at a stop sign in my small town waiting for a semi-truck to finish going through the intersection. The trailer caught a power line, bringing it down onto my vehicle in a way that prevented me from just driving away and letting it slide off. I called the non-emergency line where I was told to hang up, call 911, and not touch anything in the vehicle that I could avoid touching. Obviously. Fire truck showed up and used some type of insulated pole with a ground attached as a secondary measure to pull the line off of my vehicle. I drove a short distance to a safe area and gave a statement to police with the truck's DOT and trailer plate number while EMC shut off the line. I work in emergency road service. I got a call for a lockout where a disabled woman was locked inside her car because of electrical issues. Because she had some kind of electronic assistance for getting in and out of the car, and the car was dead. She was stuck. It was snowing to beat the band and non-emergency response times were 4 hours. It was 20 degrees out. I told her to call 911 and she absolutely refused to do it. I'm a firefighter, and numerous times people will just call to the station to report an emergency. We still have to tell them to call 911 because we're not allowed to self-dispatch. Got a non-emergency call from a mother telling me her daughter, who was home alone, called her mom and said that someone just kicked in her front door and she was hiding under her bed with the person roaming through the house. So I dispatch all my units, in which they get there in about 2 minutes, and just turned out that it was the landlord that gave 24 hours notice to come fix a light. Definitely an emergency that turned out to be nothing. Mom should have called 911 in that situation. I've taken many legit emergencies on the non-emergency line. Most memorable was a lady who shot her husband and just called us to collect the body. What always shocked me was when it was busy and I would ask, is this an emergency or can you hold? People would always say they could hold but then have legit emergencies. Like, no, your stab wound cannot hold. I often found that in shock people tend to get hyper focused on one detail and leave out vital ones. Actually a dispatcher. Entire company was BLS, so generally only non-emergencies. Caller called to say that a man was attacking a woman outside. What she meant to say was that the man had attached screwdrivers to a glove Wolverine style and was punching this woman in the face, leaving perfect circle holes all over her face. All for her purse at 5 in the morning. She survived. Once a man tried to climb in my bedroom window. At the time I had a really old shirty bed that was always coming apart, so I pulled the leg off and scared him away with it. Then I called the non-emergency number because he was already gone. There was a helicopter overhead and the cop cars at my door in less than a minute, and the dispatcher was like, next time you can just call 911. A family called in because the elderly grandmother had injured her leg. They couldn't quite describe how it happened, but somehow, this poor lady's femur was broken and sticking out of the skin. Evidently this led to charges for elder abuse neglect, and I can only guess they called the non-emergency line to downplay the severity. Not over the phone, but my mother, doctor in the countryside, had once a patient walk in with his severed hand in a bag and protest vehemently when the horrified people in the waiting room were telling him to jump the damn queue. But you ladies were here first. Do you know what you are? That's right, you're a champ. Thanks for watching. Like and share if you enjoyed, don't forget the bell. Subscribe for more videos. See you soon, Martians.